guys. Well, this is the last part of today's lesson. We're going to be finishing up our organizer for the negative number rules. All right, so last time we did the addition, where we had what to do if it's the same sign or if it's a different sign. And then we had our subtraction rules and how we always want to change subtraction to an addition problem to make it easier for us. Today we're going to be finishing this side with the multiplication and division rules that you guys just learned. This will be a helpful tool for you moving forward whenever there's negative numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this go down so you can kind of see what's happening. All right. So on this side, we're going to write multiplication. All right, so it's going to look like this. I put the times symbol, the parentheses, and the dot. These are all things that are representing multiplication and ways you might see it. So if you see one, you're going to know that this is the multiplication we're talking about, not adding, subtracting, or dividing. All right, next we're going to go on to the inside. Okay, so on the inside flap, so here is our flap, multiplication flap. On the inside, right here, we're going to write all the rules. So I'm going to hold this up so you can write that. So we have negative times a negative is a positive times a positive is a positive times a negative is also a negative, and a positive times a positive is a positive. So like we talked about, anytime the signs match, so like at the bottom here when they're both positive and then at the top when they're both negative, the sign is going to be positive on the answer. But when these signs don't match, like these two in the middle where we have a negative and a positive, the sign on the answer is always going to be negative. Okay, now on the inside flap, the other flap, so we have our flap here on this part. We're going to write some examples for each type of problem you might see. And notice how I use different signs, like on the front, we have multiplication, our parentheses, and our dot to show different ways we might see multiplication. So starting at the top, we have -4 times -4. Because they're both negative, the sign on the answer is positive. So 4 times 4 is 16. The second one, we have a negative times a positive. So -10 with the parentheses, which mean multiplication. So -10 times +4 equals -40. All right, down here we have a positive and a negative. We have the dot for multiplication, and I put parentheses around that -2 because otherwise it might get confusing and you might not see the dot and think that's 3 minus 2. So sometimes we put parentheses around numbers, and that shows that their sign is negative. Not the same as up here, where the numbers with the parentheses are right next to our number we're multiplying. So this is multiplication. This is also multiplication, but the parentheses is not showing multiplication in this section. So we have a +3 times a -2, and that is -6. All right, positive times a negative is a negative. And then last, we have our two positive numbers, 8 times 3, and that just gives us 24. All right, and finally we're going to do our division flap. So that's going to be the last one that we haven't written on. I have division, and then I have the two different ways we might see division. So you can see the division sign, but you also might see division as a fraction. So fractions sometimes can show division as well. Okay, on the inside, so here's our division flap. We're going to flip it on the inside right here. We're going to just write our rules again like we did up at the top. So we have the rules on the inside of the flap. All right, so negative divided by a negative is positive. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. Positive divided by a negative is a negative, and positive divided by a positive is a positive. So just like with the multiplication rules, anytime the signs match, so like here, and down here where they're both the same, the sign is going to be positive on your answer. But with your middle two options, if the signs don't match, the answer sign is going to be negative. All right, finally we're going to do our examples. So these two are very similar. We have the rules all down the middle and then the examples on the flaps. So moving on to our division examples, I used a couple different ways to show them. Just like on the flap where we had division sign and then the fraction, I tried to show some of those here so that we can normalize seeing them in that way. So the first example we have is -16 divided by -4. Because the signs match, they're both negative, the answer is going to be positive. And 16 divided by 4 is 4, so it's positive 4. The second example, I used a fraction to show division. So I have negative 12 divided by positive 2. The signs don't match, so my answer is going to have a negative sign. And then I can just divide. 12 divided by 2 is 6, so our answer is negative 6. Down here, we have the division sign again, so 100 divided by negative 10. Again, the signs don't match, so our answer is going to have that negative sign. And then we just do the division. 100 divided by 10 equals 10. So negative 10 is our answer. And then finally, we have two positive numbers. I used the fraction form. This is actually called a mixed number, and we're going to be learning about that in the coming weeks. So 10 divided by 2 equals 5. They're both positive, so our answer is positive. Okay, so here is our finished product. We have two flaps for addition and subtraction, and then we have a flap for multiplication and division. Remember, addition and subtraction are probably a little bit harder than multiplication and division because they don't have quite as many tricks to remember. You have to kind of use your addition flaps a lot. Remember changing subtraction to addition and then using the two rules that we learned up here. Multiplication and division have the same rules. It just depends, are you multiplying or dividing. So hopefully you get this and you can use it for your future stuff.